Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. They are licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee, and they provide services such as mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you need any of these services, contact them 931-433-4660, 931-433-4660. Also, they are in need of heavy equipment operators, concrete finishers, CDL dump truck drivers, and pipe layers. If you're interested in employment with this family-owned business, you can go to the website www.sjnl.com. That's www.sjnl.com. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to Huntsville in 1986, and we've had a wonderfully fulfilling experience living in this city. Our life has been filled with opportunities, and our life has been filled with outright adventures. I've been in ministry since the spring of 1980. Jackie and I have been married for over 37 years. I've been a licensed professional counselor for about 23 years, and I've also worked with the local police department as a chaplain who is assigned to a SWAT team. This spring is my 29th year to be in that role. I used to write little snippets in a church bulletin, and they were stories, and we take those day-to-day stories and talk about facts. The facts lead to concepts, the concepts lead to applications, and we take those applications and try to have some life lessons out of them. We've turned those articles now into a audio form, which is our little podcast. Just a cautionary word about the facts. Sometimes we tell you the facts just exactly the way it happened, but every now and then we like to tell the story the way we've heard people tell the story, the way they say it happened. And we're going to do a little bit of embellishment. It's all in good, clean fun. It's for educational purposes. Thank you for joining our podcast. Be sure and check out our resource page, LonnieJonesResources.com. That's a link to our books and some other products. We have some online resources that you can click for free, and some of them are for purchase. But we thank you for keeping up with Jones. They warn us against confabulation. Confabulation is the thing that happens after a critical incident, where if you talk to someone immediately after the event, they tend to remember things from other people's points of view. Someone may have told them this is what they saw, and they integrate that into their narrative. When we get involved with the police officers and there's a deadly force encounter, a critical incident, they're supposed to have at least 2 sleep cycles before we interview them about what was going on. Anytime you're involved in a high-stress situation, you should wait before you start trying to assemble the details, because other people's perspectives will interfere with that. I didn't do that on this occasion. I talked about the incident immediately after it happened, and I even talked about it when I got home to Jackie. This is the way I remember it. I'm telling this story with permission. A lot of the things that I tell on the podcast sort of channel my true spirit animal, and my spirit animal is Wile E. Coyote. I end up looking more like Daffy Duck, portraying a superhero than any actual hero that I've ever imagined myself to be. But with his permission and your indulgence, I'll share this story. The phone rang and they asked me to join a men's retreat. This was going to be the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I drove in from Arkansas with my wife. And then on Saturday, I got up and joined a group of men, and we went out for a hike. They were going to spend the night camping on the trail loop around the great Stone Door. Stone Door is a park in Tennessee. And these men had asked me would I join their group and do a rappelling seminar. And I agreed. I told them that everybody should bring a 20-foot piece of tubular webbing, a rock climbing grade webbing, and a pair of leather gloves. And I had the rest of the equipment. I was no longer doing private guiding. And I had done some private guiding and had a full contingent of harnesses and helmets and things. But I had since moved one of my operations from the challenge course on Keel Mountain, where we were insured by Worldwide Outfitters and Guides. And now our insurance just covers the property at Wellstone. But I joined these guys on this beautiful fall afternoon, and we used the webbing to tie a version of a ranger harness. And this is the harness that the military uses all the time to make a real quick rappel seat. And I set up the rappel. And when I'm taking groups or dealing with people that are unexperienced as climbers, I do a couple of things. Number one, I rig the main line, and we're going to be letting them rappel on a single rope. That rope is usually connected to 2 anchors, and those 2 anchors have a tensionless rig. That means we're not using any knot to actually secure the rope, but setting the rope up in such a way that there's no tension on the knot, so you get 100% integrity in the strength of the rope. That's known as a tensionless rig. The second thing I do is I bring a second rope, and that rope is used to attach to a lowering device. I use a configuration known as a Muntner hitch. And so that if the person rappelling gets in trouble, I have a second rope that I'm guiding them down using a friction device so that they could just let go of the main rappel line and I could lower them all the way to the ground. I actually did this in a training scenario down in Jefferson County, or actually we were in Tuscaloosa County. And as we were rappelling with these tactical officers into this building, and I was supervising the top, that was my role. I was the rig master. And the word came across the radio, hey, the team exploring this building has discovered a device, and you must evacuate all personnel from the top of the building. So we began to rappel guys off this building, but one of the medics in the group did not have his gloves. Well, I had stacked a separate rope up and had it flaked into a pile, and so we connected this medic to a harness, and I lowered him off of a 4-story building using this Muntner hitch, and he didn't have to rappel and didn't have to worry about the fact that he didn't have any gloves. I use this in lots of scenarios, and this is always my backup scenario, so that if somebody gets in trouble, I can use the Muntner hitch rope to rescue them. Now, when I tie a main line rappel line, and then I set up the lowering line, I have another smaller rope that I build this nest so that I can clip myself to the cliff edge, and that way I stand right on the edge and talk to my people, talk to the people who are rappelling, and can coach them and supervise them and watch them, and I'm not in any danger of being pulled off the edge or falling off the edge. The third thing that I do is I take an extra rope. So now you've got 3 full lengths of rope and 1 partial rope. The extra rope is flaked out and attached to an anchor point so that if I have to actually go down that rope and help somebody, I've got immediate access. So this is preparedness. You do what you do in case contingencies arise. And we'd been rappelling, and so we had a guy at the bottom doing a belay. They were being belayed from the top on the lowering line or the Muntner hitch line. And basically, we had all our bases covered. Now, I've done some training scenarios where you rescue people from entanglements. I've taken a managing a rock site class. I've done some unconscious victim rescues. We've done some conscious victim rescues. We've done what we call a technical lower. I was in a class over at Little River Canyon with True Adventure Sports, and the young man who owns that is named Israel. And if you really want a good experience and get to do some rappelling in Little River Canyon, you need to check out True Adventure Sports and this young man named Israel. He has a high-speed operation, and he's a really neat guy. But we were doing this training scenario, and I was supposed to rappel down to an entangled climber, attach him to a pickoff strap, cut the rope that he's hanging on, and rappel to the ground with him on my shoulder using my main rope. And when I got down to him, the instructor of the course told the young man who was supposed to be the quote unquote victim to be combative. And so he started fighting and struggling with me. I put my foot against him and pushed him away, and he grabbed the edge of my pants and put it over his shoulder and was reaching inside. And I was afraid at this point, if I allow him access to my harness or he touches my buckles, maybe they'll fail me in this class. Well, with an arm, with my leg over his shoulder and one leg under his opposite arm, I just locked up a triangle choke on him and thought, well, this will calm him down. Well, the young man had never seen any Brazilian jiu-jitsu and didn't know anything about a triangle choke. And so he wouldn't tap. So I thought I was doing my technique wrong. I adjusted his helmet, kind of turned his head to the right angle, leaned upside down on the rope, and really put the juice to this triangle choke. And I put the kid to sleep. I knocked him out on this rope. And then we lowered him to the ground, and he wakes up with, "Dude, what'd you do to me, man?" And I had to explain that I'd put him to sleep with a triangle choke. Anyway, I've got this situation set up. I've gone over my contingencies. I've looked at what could go wrong. We picked a good spot. And I don't know, we may have a dozen guys go over the edge and rappel this thing. And this one young man in the group said, "Hey, I didn't bring any gear. I was not intending to do this, but my friends have encouraged me to do this, and I want to do this. I've always wanted to do this." And I acquiesced, and we got him into a Ranger harness and hooked him up, had him on the main rappel line, had his gloves on. We went over the proper procedures, put him into the Muntner hitch, and started him over the edge. Walked him, past the transition where you go from standing on terra firma to hanging over the edge of a cliff and walking down. And about the time that I lost sight of him, so he's 15, 20 feet, maybe 30 down this cliff face, my Muntner hitch line, the line I'm using to kind of guide him and lower him, stops moving. And so I ask, "Hey, what's wrong?" And he says, "My foot is caught. My foot is trapped." So I lean over the edge and put all the tension I can in my safety harness. And I lean over the edge and look, and sure enough, his foot is caught in a wedge in a rock. And sometimes when people are rappelling, instead of just walking down the side of the building or the side of the rock, they try to step down like they're actually climbing down it. You're not doing the work. The rope is doing the work. But sometimes people are nervous, and so they want to feel like they're in more control. When if you'll just hold that rope behind your back and put your feet flat on the wall and lower your rear end and let your feet follow, you'll be fine. But for whatever reason, he's got a foot trapped. I lean over to kind of assess the situation, and he takes the hand that he uses to stop himself. This is the hand that should stay behind your back. And he reaches up over his rappel device, and he's trying to pull himself out. Well, when you create slack in the system, my Muntner hitch is not holding you now. And about the time I said, "Hey, look, you really need to have both hands, one hand behind your back," his grip failed. A 10.5 millimeter rope is not designed to be climbed barehanded. They're exceptionally smooth and slick, and they're designed to roll through gear. And his grip broke, and he falls backwards, and he completely inverts. And as he goes upside down, his pants and his harness slide to his knees. Now, the modification I make to the Ranger harness when I tie it is such that it gets tighter if it gets any space. So this thing actually caught him on his knees. Now, I've been in these harnesses, manufactured harnesses, Ranger harnesses, a diaper sling. I've inverted in every harness I've ever been in. And I probably started playing in harnesses, homemade harnesses, in trees when I was, 14 years old probably. I've never had a harness slip with me. Never had a harness move with me. I've been upside down in multiple situations and never had a harness move. I've never seen this before in my life. And I've got this young man somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 feet off the ground, and he is upside down and he's naked from the waist up. Immediately, you start rolling through your rescue scenarios. Well, I can't cut his main line and lower him on the Muntner hitch because it doesn't work if you're upside down and naked. I can't rappel down to him, put him on my shoulders, and rescue him with a pickoff because that doesn't work if you're upside down and naked. I immediately grab the third rope, the rope that I'm supposed to use to go down to him and do a pickoff, and get it to him and around his shoulders, and then the gentlemen that are remaining on the top of the cliff site with me, get them to pull, and we upright this guy. So now he's hanging with a rope under his armpits, but his knees and his feet are useless to him because they're wrapped up in this harness. And if he were to pass out in this configuration, his arms are going to slide back through this rope and he's going to hang upside down again. And I don't know if the harness is going to stay or not. I don't know if he'll bang his head or not. And so everything that I've ever been trained to do, everything that I ever thought would work in a situation like this, it won't work. The only thing I can do is go out to him and put another harness on him. I've got just enough rope left in my short anchoring rope that I do for my personal anchoring system. I've probably got enough rope to reach him. And so I tie a knot in the end of that rope because it will not reach the bottom. And if I go off the end of this rope, I'm going to free fall. I put an auto block system that you've heard me talk about on my rope. And I remember distinctly asking the men at the top, and then probably asking a little louder than I needed to hold and to pull and to make sure we don't lose this guy. And I stepped to the edge, and I remember thinking distinctly, no one here will be able to explain to my wife why I made the decision to step over the edge of this cliff. And down I go. Now, once I get down to him, and this is a private conversation, we're 150 feet in the air, and it's just me and him. He said two things to me. The first thing he said to me was, tell Adam Ragland to quit looking at my junk, which I don't know how in the world a guy who's just inverted and almost fallen out of his harness has the composure to make jokes, especially jokes about our mutual friend named Adam. I put this harness on him in the air. I do a chest rig and under his legs, and then we dorsally attach it, an attachment between his shoulder blades. And now the interesting part is I've got to decide whether I can climb out of this thing or not. So I look him in the eye and say, look, I'm sorry, I've got to leave you. And I push away, and I grab back onto the rocks. And I start climbing out. Now, if I can't make this climb, if for some reason the rock is in such that it's too difficult to climb for me, I'm stuck out here too. And so now we've got two people to rescue. Well, the rock is kind of layered on the side that I'm trying to climb. And it's the rock that, has like big slabs. And the thing that happens with those big slabs is water gets between them. And when the water freezes, water expands, and then when it melts, it loosens. And so for years and years and years, the water has been, wiggling this rock. Well, I swing over, and I make a pretty good little scramble. And I'm not a great climber, but this is, some pretty good handholds. And I get up on the next ledge, and I'm not trying to climb directly above my trapped friend because I don't want anything to fall on him. And it's a good thing because as I get on the second move or the third move out of this climb and I grab this slab, one of those big slabs actually comes loose and lands on my foot and traps it on this ledge. My day can't probably get any worse. Well, I hang with my left hand and I reach down and grab this rock and I clear everybody out from the bottom. I'm yelling, "Hey, I'm going to turn this rock loose." And with what felt to me like Herculean effort, I pulled this thing off my foot. My friends tell me that it sounded like a Volkswagen tumbling off the top. So now I realize, okay, your foot's probably broken, and when the adrenaline wears off, you're probably not going to have much of a shoulder left because this was a huge piece of rock. Well, I climb out of the cliff and get onto the top, and there's a guy that's not with our party who has drifted over. This gentleman's name is Troy Bishop. He lives in Nashville. He saw us in trouble and came over to help. I, whatever reason, just got a feeling that this guy knows what's going on. He's got some kind of military experience. He told me that he had some rescue ops background. He comes out to the cliff edge with me. I clip him into just like a loose swami belt. He takes his pistol off and slides it under a rock. He leans over the edge and he begins to talk to our friend. And he kept saying over and over, "Today's going to be a good day. Today's going to be a good day. Nobody shot at us yet. Today's going to be a good day." And so we take this dorsally attached harness that's on this guy and we start to drag him up this cliff. Now, normally, you take the length of the fall, you add it to the weight of the man, you divide it by 50, and that's how many full-grown men it takes to pull somebody up. Well, Troy Bishop and I pull this gentleman up. And just when we get to we're at the top and we've got to make this really one last pull. And we're asking this guy to endure being tugged on. And it's painful to be drug up a rock with a harness around your shoulders. And as we start to pull this guy up, Mr. Bishop looks at this guy and says, "We got to have one more big pull out of you. And God is my witness, Lonnie Jones will not let go of this rope." True that, my friend. But his calm words, his assurance of my commitment to this young man's safety. We pull this guy back over the top of the rock, roll him out. I cut him out of the harness. We get him some water. Whole thing probably didn't last 15 minutes. But got him out and got him rescued. I have a gift from this young man, and part of the engraving on the gift says, "Today is going to be a good day." And I travel with that gift. Probably 90% of my life, I have that somewhere near me or with me or in my possession because it says today is going to be a good day. The significance of this event, the significance of these events is not lost on me that this was a near fatal occurrence. And in all my years of climbing and all my years of rappelling, of all the things that I've done, I've never had an incident like this. The first thing that makes it significant is the simple fact that I was shown grace and mercy. Now, I was not guilty of any negligence. I don't think there was any oversight on my part. Sometimes time and chance happen to all men. But I could have been blamed for this. I could have been hated for this. There were people in the party who were ready to blame when the park ranger came and asked about the incident because they had to fill out some paperwork about this being a near miss. You know, he said, "Did you have a bottom belay or a top belay?" Well, we had both. "How many ropes did you have present for this operation?" We had 3. The park ranger was pretty plain to this group of men. Said if Lonnie had not been here, this young man would have died. I don't know that that's true. People with common sense could have solved this problem. But grace and mercy, because see, I was in charge. And although I was not negligent, it was my responsibility. This was my fault. Not that I was at fault, but it was my fault. And the composure of the young man hanging upside down with his clothes coming off, he'd made peace with his own death. He told me that when he flipped over, he was like, well, I've accepted the fact that I'm done. His thoughts are about his children. His thoughts are about his beautiful wife. He was not angry. I don't really even think he was scared, because when I rappelled down to him, his first statement was about what someone from the bottom was looking at. But he gave me an incredible amount of grace, an incredible amount of mercy. And although people will attach the concept of heroics to this, the person who was saved that day was not the young man tangled in the rope, but it was me. I could have been blamed, vilified. My reputation as a programmer or as a guide could have been talked about in terms that were unflattering. And although they may or may not have been true, it was very easy for someone to say, hey, I went with Lonnie. I was in Lonnie's charge, and this happened to me because I was with him. And that did not happen. I was given an incredible amount of grace, an incredible amount of mercy. And this young man is one of my best friends because he rescued me that day. The second thing that was said to me when I rappelled down and was hanging suspended beside this young man, that I've never told anybody, but he turned to me and there was no fear in his eyes. There was no panic in his voice. He said, hey, tell Adam Ragland to quit looking at my junk. And then he looked at me and said, hey, man, I'm sorry you had to come out here. I'm sorry you had to come down here. Wow. You see, I pray that maybe 3 times a week. In my morning or my evening meditations, or when I'm driving and I'm praying to God, I stop and I realize that I've done things and I've made mistakes and I've gotten myself in trouble and I didn't follow the directions I'd been given, and because of that, I had to be rescued. Somebody had to leave heaven and come here and put themselves at risk and do something for me that I could not do for myself because I was tangled up and I was powerless and my own doom was imminent. And so, yes, one of the most significant things ever said to me in my life has become part of my prayers. And I just simply start several days of my week with saying, and I'm sorry you had to come down here, but I'm so glad that you did. There are 32 miles of cave passages in Cumberland Cavern. 333 feet underground is the Volcano Room. The Volcano Room is the site for the youth rally known as Erupt. It's an underground youth rally. It's an annual event. It takes place in October. The next Erupt is scheduled for October of 2021. Erupt is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. If you'd like more information, you may contact them at eruptyouithrally@gmail.com. That's eruptyouithrally@gmail.com, or check out their website for more information, 3 W's and a dot, eruptyouithrally.com, www.eruptyouithrally.com.